There's too many people.
knows so many people in our
Live stream? Okay,
Yeah, so,
all right.
but thank you. We're all very excited.
Such good.
Where's my agenda?
There we go. Just in Kirk, look at this. Oh, I should pull it up and see if it's.
There's Chris. Do we know if Chris O'Brien is coming?
He is going to be calling in and getting the conference line
Okay,
going, so just 1 minute.
very good. And
Agenda. I shoot. I thought.
James, do I assume
thought I
correctly
had
that
it
you
printed out.
won't be taking the notes
I
today?
was not planning to.
Hi, Chris. Hey, how's it going? Good.
He's going to pass the baton.
I'd be happy to. I didn't think about the minutes. I didn't know if April was taking them or someone else who was taking the.
Yeah, I meant to talk to you about that and I kept forgetting.
If there is.
We can tag team on it.
Okay.
You need some paper?
And the
Yeah, could I-
meeting will be recorded,
Yep.
so you
I can go
can
back.
Yeah.
and do it.
play it over and type them
A
up.
page or two, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah. You are welcome.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, it is.
Very good afternoon. The sun is shining and the sky is blue
Today.
Yes.
in the moment.
Sorry for the delay here.
No worries. And did you say that Elizabeth and Carol are also calling in?
I invited them to, the one that's available.
Right.
I did meet with them yesterday.
About the May 4th.
Correct, yep. And I'm meeting with them again on Friday.
We'll talk about that when we get to it down here.
Oh, right.
Okay. Is Chris able to?
Welcome to the State of Minnesota Conference Center. Enter your conference. If you are the leader, press star now. Please enter your leader pin, followed by. To start or join your conference, press 1. You will now be placed into conference. After joining the call, to record the conference for those who may miss this call, or for future playback, press star 2.
Hello, Chris, are you there?
I am here, yes.
All right, very good. We're live, and we'll be starting the meeting.
Excellent, thank you, James. All right, I will call the meeting to order. And maybe before we get into the agenda, we'll just take a moment. I do have a question, James. Is Chris able to vote on the phone, or is he?
I think he can, actually.
Does he count as being present, calling in on the phone?
I would say yes.
Yes.
Yes?
He does count as being present.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you for that clarification. That I didn't know. All right, so for Chris's benefit, we'll go around the table so he can know everyone who is here. So, Bill?
Bill Gabler from District 5, otherwise known as the West End.
Jason Hill, Executive Director of the HRA.
Who?
Imposter, Chris. An imposter is here in this chair.
We are delighted to have you here with us today, Jason. I'm Mary Somnus. I am the chair of the board, and I'm sorry, I don't know my district number. Is it on my name tag? District 3.
I'm Chris Skildum, District 2.
I'm Lawrence Doe, Hoveland, known as the East End.
Stacy Hawkins, Cook County Commissioner, District 2.
Ann Sullivan, Cook County Commissioner, District 4, and the alternate for this group.
Chris O'Brien, District 4, Commissioner.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. And Lawrence, Hovland, and Grand Portage.
Oh, Homeland and Grand Portage. Yes.
District 1.
Yes, District 1.
District 1.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And I would also acknowledge that James Yorkie, County Administrator, is here with us. We might be needing to ask you some questions during the meeting, James.
Sure.
Thank you for your presence. All right, then we'll move on to the approval of the March meeting minutes.
I'd move approval of the minutes.
All right, motion by Bill. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Lawrence? Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. 5-all. The motion passes. The next thing on the agenda is preparations for the executive director's arrival. I would note that this agenda was prepared for last week, Wednesday, the regular date of our meeting, which we postponed because the roads were not friendly for driving into the meeting. So, we can go on from there and say the start date for Jason was this past Monday, April 25th. Jason's been working in the office. This is his third day here on site in the community. We are sharing office space with the Cook County Grand Moray Joint Economic Development Authority. We have not yet negotiated the lease. We're gonna, as per verbal agreement with the EDA, we're gonna wing it for a little bit. What we need to do is determine of the $125,000 budget allocation from the levy for the HRA, we need to nail down the amount of money that will be spent on salary and benefits for this calendar year. We have purchased a computer and a screen and some other office equipment. And then with the funds remaining in our $125,000, we'll negotiate with the EDA. The plan is for the staff who will be working in the building to figure out the best way to build walls, to make offices, and also to make the walls soundproof, because right now they're hollow walls, so there is no confidentiality in that building. And we need to do that for the sake of the people who are working there and the constituents who will be coming into the building. So we will then negotiate with the EDA regarding the lease, the rent payment, and the construction for those office walls. So.
Right, and just a question, are those wall modifications and all that considered to be lease improvements by the landlord, or are those just going to be the expense of the EDA and the HRA?
Yeah, they are ours.
Okay.
Yes, and we're grateful that Jeremy Riddlebauer, the landlord, has given us permission to do whatever it is we want to do there. But just as on the other side, Edward Jones had to make confidential office spaces because it's a financial advisor kind of an organization, and that was also at the cost. And fortunately, we don't have a great big corporate backing like Edward Jones, but we'll figure it out. I'm sure that together, as we do in this community, we'll work together and find the best, most cost-effective way to take care of that. If there's any questions, Chris O'Brien, do you have any questions? I want to remember to include you.
No question. Thank you, Mary.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions about that?
When will we know the financial aspect of that budget?
Soon.
Okay. And that'll just get sent out to each of us?
Well, I don't know if the board will be involved in the negotiations, or if the staff will do that, and then the board can just.
The final, how it shakes out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is what it is kind of a thing, I think. But, yeah, you'll be informed as
Okay.
we go through the
Chair,
process.
if I may add something to, are these James, are we supposed to be talking into these microphones? Are these on?
They are on.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Should be picking up the conversation. I could hear you guys earlier.
Okay.
Before the live stream started.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, Commissioner, just for a little more detail on that. So we're starting to, as Chair indicated, purchase a couple of office equipment things such as like a Zoom membership so that we can actually host Zoom meetings and they don't shut down on us. And in addition to that, I've been talking with the Executive Director, Trost, about what the needs are going to be, and she's saying the EDA intends on being quite flexible and working with us to figure out what's the most sensible way to lay out the office and how the lease would work, whether we would be a sublease under the EDA or we would do a separate lease with Mr. Riddlebauer. So I think there's going to be, there's definitely a partnership element to that, and they want to make it work. It's just working out those details now that I'm here, they have to contend with it. So, but we'll be keeping, as we negotiate those, bringing it to the board what the intent is for the board's review.
Okay, thanks.
You're
Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
All right. So the next thing on the agenda is the financial management issues. And this is an interesting concept. I originally anticipated that this would function like the EDA in such that the county forwards to the EDA its levy dollars that have been approved. But as James met with Auditor Powers, and it was determined that because our annual budget this year is a total of $125,000, a big chunk of that is going to go again towards the salary and the benefits package. Then there's like the rent and the cell phone bill and a few other incidental office equipment, that it really didn't make a lot of sense for us to set up our own bank account and employ our own bookkeeper and accountant to keep track of that small amount of money. The cost-benefit analysis of all of that didn't make sense. So we met with Auditor Powers yesterday or the day before, I don't know. But anyway, the county is going to help us with financial management. And Jason will simply submit invoices to the auditor's office, who will then pay the bills on behalf of the HRA. However, the county will acquire for Jason a county credit card like other department heads have here, so that he can do things like acquire a cell phone. You can't get a cell phone without a credit card. So we have to make that work. So, for example, Jason is currently using his personal cell phone until we're able to make these things fall into place. So we're very fortunate that we have an agreeable staff person who is willing to make things work, and that we have great support from the county that will also make things work. So, yes, Chris?
Mary, question on that. So just to be clear then, is I just want to make sure I understand the responsibilities and the processes for financial reporting then. Will, if Commissioner, if Auditor Powers is tracking the expenses and so forth, will he then send to Jason, monthly financials as though those get relayed to the board? What's the process for financial reporting?
There are monthly reports that you will receive, Jason.
Commissioner, did you hear that? Oh,
I heard monthly report.
James said yes. There are monthly reports that Jason will receive, and Jason will also keep his own ledger to make sure that our bookkeeping matches the auditor's bookkeeping, right?
correct, Chair. I have an Excel sheet started, and I have my file with my receipts so far. So I will be turning those in probably monthly to the county, to the auditor and his staff, and then so we'll have two record keepings. I'll have mine to match up with Auditor Powers to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question then. On down the road, when there's a larger budget that we're working with, the larger expenses, are they approved by the board? before the expenses are made?
I would imagine that would be the case.
Actually, Commissioner, if I could, I had a question about that. I didn't know if the board had already established or adopted some framework for purchasing authority levels, or, so for example, if the county has a framework they work within, if it's above X thousand dollars, then it would go to a certain level of authority or approval. I wasn't sure if you've adopted one or if you've created one, and I think that's something the board should certainly consider if you haven't.
I think that's my question. I don't think we have.
Okay.
We have not.
Well, right now, there's no
And
budget.
does the county have any, something similar to this that we could at least start off with as a discussion item?
You know, it's funny, Commissioner Gabler, I actually don't do a lot of purchasing, so I'm not super familiar with those. But we'll share what we have, certainly.
Maybe if you can't fit it on the credit card, you talk to us about it.
Yeah, and for Commissioner, for reference, the credit card limit is $2,000, so there's no shopping spree that the executive director plans on going on.
So that could naturally be the
Yeah.
threshold.
Sure, if it's above that limit, then it's a request from the board to fund whatever the thing might be.
Right.
I'll leave that to the board to.
Right, so far, so for example, we were setting up a meeting with some developers for this morning, and Jason set up a Zoom Pro account for the HRA for 1 year for $150. He emailed me and said, is it okay? I said, yes, it's okay, because I asked you to do this and we need this, so yes. So, so far we've been working together on those things. There hasn't been anything that has been out of the ordinary, that we need the computer, we need the office equipment, we need the cell phone, we need, so.
I think my question was, I mean, the budget for this year is already fixed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
I just turned on the YouTube. That was some background noise, and I'm watching you all as well.
Oh, okay. Yes, and so going forward.
So, yeah, what I said was when we have a larger budget. And I think that it's probably a good idea to have a policy in place before larger budgets are in place, is really the bottom line for my questioning.
Commissioner, if you'd like, I can put together a proposal for what that could look like, and then submit it to the board for your review and
Good.
discussion.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And I have located the county's purchasing policy that I can share with all of you, but basically, unbudgeted capital expenses in excess of $1,000 require the county board's approval. So if you wanted to use this as a template, you might use the HRA board as an analog. Budgeted capital expenses less than $5,000 may be purchased without additional approval of the county board. So those are the broad strokes.
Administrator, you said you're going to send that to everyone?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that will also happen as we move forward into projects and we begin to apply for grants to help move projects forward. Typically, the grant applications require a resolution from the board to apply for and accept the funds if a grant is awarded. So it will always be on top of all that kind of activity. And again, you're right, we haven't created those policies, we haven't written them. It's all part of the startup of the organization, so we haven't talked about that yet.
It will be a good problem to have if we need to have a budget question or conversation.
Right,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. So, any other questions or thoughts about financial?
Well,
Bill?
probably not totally about financial, but it leads into a good discussion of the responsibilities of the board and the executive director. And that leads to me in communication. We've got one employee here we've told him this will be like drinking out of a fire hose. And there's so much to be done. My concern is that we probably could use some boundaries as to the communication with the executive director by the commissioners. My own preference would be to have them run through the chair. Not that a commissioner couldn't talk to the executive director. That isn't the point, but normally just in day-to-day matters, it'd be better if the chair were at least involved in those and actually the focal point of communicating with the director. I mean, there'll certainly be annual reviews, there's quarterly reviews, I'm sure, of financials, all those things that boards should do. But on a day-to-day basis, I just don't want one employee to be overwhelmed because we all have ideas, we all have priorities of what do we want working on first. And until we have board discussions of those items of, what are the board's priorities, and even after that, I think just trying to establish a modicum of responsibility with the chair to manage that process is, I think, why we pay Mary the big bucks. So.
That's why, okay.
But I just think that's part of governance, and we need to be talking about that and have some respect for the roles of both the staff and the board. And so, as Mary's already pointed out, honestly, in this county, things are so cooperative and generally, work it out. I've been impressed with that, and I'm sure it'll continue, but it should bear some further discussion of those roles at some point. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bill. Any other board members have thoughts or comments about that? I'm happy to serve in that role.
Mary, this is Chris. I guess my only thought would be that I think it's a really sensible idea, especially for inbound communication going to the executive director. I think that there's, in the case in the early stages, Jason may want, as part of his orientation, to reach out for one-on-ones just to the board members, and not necessarily have to work through the chair for those purposes.
Yeah, I'm thinking that one of the things we haven't talked about is for Jason to reach out to each of you individually and arrange for a one-on-one introductory Zoom or cup of coffee or however you want to go about that. I think that you should just be going and doing that, and I don't need to be a part of those meetings unless you want me to be. I've told you that. I'm happy to be with you all day, every day, if you want me to be. But y'all can decide that, how you want to do that.
Yeah, Chair, she's forewarning you. I'm planning on reaching out to each of you to have such a meeting over a coffee or Zoom, whatever your preference, to hear where you're coming from, of course, get some perspective from board members, some goals. I would also like to...
Sorry.
It's all right. I'd also like to have somewhat of a brown bag. It's a little, if commissioners are open for it, it can be in May or June sometime, that's fine. But to have a little bit of an ideation session and get some ideas what you folks are looking to do and what you want to accomplish without the formality necessarily of the formal board proceedings, so that we can be on a table a little more brainstorming. That would be great by me if you'd be open to that. So I'll work with the chair on scheduling that and seeing what people, the appetite for that. But I'd like to meet with each of you for a little bit if I could in the coming weeks here, as your schedules allow.
I am really pleased to hear that. One of the difficulties that I have in sitting in with this board is that I haven't had a chance to meet any of these individuals in one-on-one meetings with anybody. I find that a little difficult to work with a group when we meet once a month for an hour and a half. That's one comment, so I appreciate you doing that. The other thing is that I'm uncertain as to what our role is as a board in terms of managing you as an employee. And so far, there's been just 3 days of you being here, which is fine. But I feel like it would be difficult to meet once a month to find out what you've been doing for that month, and then there'd be an issue with what you've been doing for that month. And I think it'd be helpful if there was some sort of a printout on a weekly or every 2 weeks as to what the process is, so that we're informed, rather than at the board meeting what historically has been done for the last month. I would appreciate that as somebody who's ran construction crews and really have a lot of complex operations going on, and I know what's going on most of the time. And I don't know what's going on with this as an employee coming up in this next period of time. And I would be really interested to know kind of what the monthly activities are on some regular basis, not monthly, but something a little quicker than that, a little sooner than that.
Commissioner, to just make sure I understand the aim here is to know what activities the executive directors, what I'd be doing on a bi-weekly basis, or like what projects, or what would be the aim of the information?
Well, the aim of the information is that if I assume that we're your bosses, and I think that it's better if we have a projected process of what the work is as it's going to unfold, and to sort of see how that's unfolding is a little difficult when it's an hour and a half every month. And I think there should be some more updates in between those monthly meetings. That's my opinion.
Understood, yeah. So, Chair, I think or Commissioner, sorry, what I think might make sense, I'm just thinking about how I've done this in the past with boards, because you can imagine, like, what I would like to avoid is effectively having 2 board meetings and 2 board packets that I'm producing, because I've seen that happen, and then it just becomes a lot more of tracking and administration that maybe isn't necessary. But what I think might be, that I would be very open to, is having a standing meeting with folks, if you want, that we can put something on the calendar monthly outside of like 2 weeks after the board meeting or some other time during the month. If folks want to, I'm happy to meet with board members for 30 minutes to give an update, and if you have any questions about projects or what we're working on, to give it there. Go ahead.
I think that's just a little more burden on your part. I think an email, bullet points. Every 2 weeks, bullet points, boom, 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 and just send that out to all 5 of us, if that's possible to send out to 5. I don't know if that's a board meeting or if that violates the public meeting rule or whatever. But I think to sit down for a half hour, each of us sit down for a half hour with you is too much.
Well, and I don't want that would be an open invitation, to be clear, Commissioner. We wouldn't have to if you didn't want to, but if people wanted to, I just want to extend that. The thing that you might see, as it might be slightly different than, for example, the construction environment you were talking about with managing projects. These things, it could be the same list for 2 months and nothing changes, because these things can take 3 years. So it might be, and that's, I can do that, but just to manage expectations, some of these initiatives take so long to get, there won't be anything really to update until it's boom, time to go. I'm happy to do that if the board would like me to provide bi-weekly updates. You let me know.
Well, maybe we can have that as a discussion. I'm not sure how the other folks feel about that.
Sure.
So we can discuss that.
This is Chris. Can I just offer a suggestion? I think that the imperative is that we want to make sure that the board meetings are the priority, and board meetings are board decisions. And I think that, I don't think we want to spend much time in the meeting, with Jason, with you, bringing you, for you to basically regurgitate what the activities have been for the past month. I think that's something that can be done more, that we can read offline, and I think that I agree with Lars that having some sort update on activities, on a bi-weekly basis is helpful, and that way we're informed coming into the board meeting, and we can set the agenda based on if there's any directional decisions that need to be made. We can do that, and then have more time for that and less time for simply having you tell us what you've been doing for the last month.
Fair enough.
So, it's my understanding that Jason can communicate with all 5 of us. That is not in violation of the public meeting law. We just can't all 5 talk to each other. So he could just write every other week, in between in the bi-weekly, maybe just like a summary of what you've been doing and maybe what you have coming up, kind of a thing. Does that
that's excellent.
seem to be okay?
Yeah, Commissioner, just to be clear, because I'm going to start making a template for this. So I have done development reports, which basically lists what I did for the HRA in Duluth, list the projects, list the status updates on them, and then list upcoming initiatives or things we're thinking about that are coming to the next, maybe to the next agenda, maybe to the one after that, depending, and sending those in the off weeks so that, to your points, we're not spending the time in this forum, me telling you, this is what we've been up to for a month. So I'm happy to do that if that's what you're thinking about.
Yeah, that is. I feel like I'd be much better prepared for a reasonable discussion if I had that information. If I get it the day of, I'm not really prepared.
So I'll plan on doing it the second, is it, this is the third?
This is the third
Well,
Wednesday.
usually it's the third, right?
Yeah.
So I'll do it 2 weeks prior to this, the first Wednesday of the month.
Perfect,
Great.
perfect.
Okay. Any other thoughts about that? And, you know, for now, just for your level of comfort, the first 3 days have been, I'm spraying him with the fire hose, and
He looks a little damp.
I tried to dry off before the meeting was over.
some introductions to people who have projects that are ongoing, things that are in pre-development. This afternoon, we drove around a little bit just in Grand Marais and looked at a couple of locations where there is potential for some housing development, where I'm aware that people are talking about some things. Jason is also continuing to be in conversation with some people in his network that he's bringing with him to Cook County. So nothing concrete, of course, but
Interest.
a transition,
Yeah, yeah.
just
Good.
a time of transition, so.
Sounds very good.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay, another thing that we need to put on the list, speaking of communication, is the overall communications plan. Maybe what we should talk about, the thing that was mentioned a little while ago, the brown bag thing that you mentioned, Jason, that would be, I think, modeled after a county board, what do you call it, workshop?
Committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole, where
It's a study session.
meeting that we all come together, no decisions are made, just exchanging of information and learning and education across both ways, from the or the executive director to the board, and from the board to Jason, but we don't vote on anything. And that's where we can create an agenda for that and discuss exactly what, here's the work plan that I shared with you, the updated work plan that Chris O'Brien did a lot of work on that, and for then the commissioners to talk about priorities and first things first and that kind of thing. We should try to schedule that sooner than later, probably. Okay. Before the May meeting. We'll try to do that
Yeah.
in the next couple of weeks here.
Can we schedule that at this meeting or not?
I don't know. Maybe. Maybe like the second week of May. The week of May 9th.
I am in, just as a reminder, Chair, I'm in town Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday until I close on my house, so.
Oh, yeah.
So if we could do one of those days, that would be more convenient if it works for the board.
I could do any of those 3 days that week.
How is your,
I think it's open.
yep. Chris O'Brien, will you be in town?
Mary, this is starting on the 9th, you said?
Yeah, so like the 10th, not the 10th, because that's an EDA meeting, we don't want to conflict with that, but maybe the 11th at 4 PM or the 12th,
Well, those work fine.
Bill?
I'm retired, and so I got a lot of flexibility here. And those dates will work.
Should we go for Wednesday, May 11th at 3 PM?
4?
Or 4 PM? Okay.
And
I'm
where
okay
will
with-
that meeting be hosted?
Can we do that here?
There's a 5 o'clock meeting of the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment that day.
Okay, we'll find a location.
Okay.
May 11th at 4 PM.
And Chair, just as a reminder, we'll have to post 3 days in advance the public meeting notice.
Okay.
Wherever the location is going to be, I just want to make sure, because I'm sure the template says it's going to be in these rooms, but if it changes.
Okay. Find a location. We maybe can do it at the office, around the table in the office. We'll check with Beth and make sure that there's no conflict with that. We'll do that post haste.
Post haste.
Community center would be another place you might want to check to see if we can.
Oh, yeah. And City Hall. There's lots of options. We'll find a place. There's only going to be this many of us. We don't need to. So, okay. We'll figure that out. Somewhere in Grand Marais. Okay? May 11th at 4 p.m. And do we call it a committee of the whole? Yeah? HRA Committee of the Whole. Okay, there you have it.
Put it in my calendar as brown bag already.
You're bringing the cookies in that brown bag, right? That away.
We used that term to entice commissioners and other, we'll bring cookies or cake or something.
All right, good discussion. Good plan. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is the May 4th HRA training and orientation for local leaders. This is from 3 to 6 p.m. here in this room. Invited are the county board, the Grand Marais City Council, and the boards of the EDA and the HRA. Minnesota Housing Partnership is preparing an agenda with James and Mike Roth and Beth Drost and myself and now Jason to help everybody understand what the HRA can do that's different from the EDA, how specifically here in Cook County the EDA and the HRA are going to work together, the transition of housing related work from the EDA to the HRA now that we have a staff person. Jason, you met with Minnesota Housing Partnership. Do you want to give an update on what you know about that?
Sure. Sorry, Chair, I'm just taking notes and keeping pseudo minutes.
Yeah.
What's the time of that again?
3 to 6 p.m.
So yes, I met with Elizabeth and Carol yesterday or the day before. It's a bit of a blur. And I'm meeting again with them on Friday to finalize the agenda. They were waiting on, I guess, my arrival to talk about a few things. I'm going to be presenting just a couple of case studies for some of the things that HRAs can do and some of the projects I've done in Duluth. And they're going to be doing that as well that they've seen in other communities. And then I believe my colleague Jeff Corey is going to also be presenting on behalf of One Roof to talk about their projects up here. And then finally, there is a Minnesota Housing staff person, Alyssa, is going to be coming to present as well. So it's a 3-hour block, and again, we're just trying to fine tune. I requested of Minnesota Housing Partnership that we include, because 3 hours becomes a long time to be presented at, I think for anyone. So I asked if we could, in the middle of there, insert a little bit of a small workshop where folks from the different boards and commissions, because this doesn't happen often where we get these bodies together probably, can talk and get some idea generation and just think about what they see as priorities and maybe some as a result of the conversations we're going to have. So there's going to be a little insertion of that somewhere in the agenda. And then the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency staff person will be wrapping up the day with some of her comments about resources and such. So as of right now, that's where the agenda sits. We'll have it finalized on Friday, and when I do get it finalized, I'll make sure that the board gets it in advance.
And will that be in person by all those presenters and not by Zoom?
Would you prefer Zoom?
No. I think this will be a blessed event.
I'm not
Actually, if it
sure
was
that all
in
the
person.
presenters are going to be able to attend in person. Some of them are going to have to be remote.
I believe that Mr. Corey is as of right now, is the only remote. And he's going to call in, because as I understand, we don't have the ability to do virtual in this room. Is that correct? That's what I was told anyhow.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think that's right.
So Jeff is going to call in, but otherwise the rest will be in person.
This is Chris O'Brien. I'll be calling in as well.
Okay.
And I will be out of town. I'm not planning to call in, I'm just planning to watch the live stream. It will be live streamed. Correct, James?
Okay. Mayor, do you know how that works with regard when folks are sharing presentations to those? I'm watching you all very clearly on the right now. It works great. But when we have presentations, does that show up on the YouTube? You know?
Chris, we don't currently have that capability. We are working to establish that, but we don't have it yet.
Okay. Thanks.
Administrator, is, for folks who are presenting, just thinking of housekeeping, will they be doing so here? Okay, and then folks will be sitting, okay, thank you.
Correct, yep.
Okay,
That's in this room, that training.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, and just as another side point for the board, the folks from Minnesota Housing Partnership and I were talking about getting if folks are interested afterwards, inviting a group, because we want to make sure that our colleague from Minnesota Housing has some time with us too, because she'll just be getting here at 3 right when the meeting starts. And I believe she is going to stay the night in Grand Moray and spend some tax dollars or money for the tax base, which is great. And we're going to have invite folks to get together to I think go and eat afterward if that's of interest to folks. So just to put that on your radar, if you want to leave a little block of time after the meeting, if you're interested in joining for a more casual conversation with folks.
Does the dinner have to be an open meeting?
That is a good question. I believe that you at a meeting you can run into each all coincidentally in public, but you cannot talk about any HRA business
Okay.
at that meeting.
you can only talk about fishing.
And there won't be any at that point, unless you have an auger.
Unfortunately, you're probably right.
Technically, you could also notice the dinner and invite members of the public to attend, but
True.
that can become tricky, I mean, just logistically, so.
I think it might be difficult for everyone to be gathered together following a housing workshop to all of a sudden stop talking about it.
Yeah,
So it probably does make sense to notice it.
yeah.
And I don't know how, it's not a formal meeting, there won't be any decisions made, nobody will vote on anything, but you still somehow have to note that a quorum of the boards may be present.
Maybe present, that's correct.
That's correct, and just
That's
note the
the idea.
location and the approximate time window that you expect to be there.
Are we I presume we're noticing the meeting for next Wednesday as well already?
It has been,
Oh, it has been noticed?
yes.
Okay, I was going to say we could piggyback on that.
Yep.
Well, if it's too cumbersome, of course, we don't have to do that. It was a thought that the MHP and I had, but I'm sure we could figure out how to notice it quickly if we found an establishment.
Well, in the notice, include the fact that any members of the public will have to buy their own dinner, because we don't want our budget busted already.
That's right. Yeah.
And
BYOD.
any member of any board
Will
will
be-
Buy their
yeah,
own.
will buy their own
That's
as
right, this
well.
is not on the HRA's dime.
not a
Yeah.
function of anybody's budget, no.
I'll work on the details of that and see how that would function.
Okay,
Great.
all right. And if you come up with the answer to that, then maybe you can coordinate with James on the posting. Okay. Any other questions or comments about that? I won't be here. Oh, I think I already said that. I'll just be watching on the live stream. All right. And we are moving quickly through our agenda. Other business.
I have a comment. I listened to former St. Paul Mayor Norm Coleman on Minnesota Public Radio, I think maybe a week or 10 days ago, and he's the current executive director of Habitat for Humanity. And he had some very interesting comments to make. One of that really caught my attention was he talked about the number of houses that were bought up by, packaged and bought up by Wall Street investors in northeast Minnesota in 2000, I think 2000, 2001 or 2. I was shocked at the number that he gave. And so the interviewer asked him how they were going to get out in front of that kind of, so what they were doing is that they were taking these houses really out off the market for first-time homeowners and turning them into rentals, long-term rentals, but rentals nevertheless. And he made the comment that they have to get out in front of that, and that I don't know, he didn't say where they got the money, but they are looking at one of these bundled packages to buy back, to put back into the community as first-time homeowners. And his whole point was to get out in front of it. And I just thought his whole conversation was excellent. So if anybody has a chance to hear that, I know it's archived on the Minnesota Public Radio interview. It was a morning interview. I'm not sure which one of the folks it was, but I found it fascinating.
They being Habitat is putting together a package to
Yes,
buy back
Habitat for
the-
Humanity is putting together a package to buy back one of these bundles, and then put those homes back into first-time home ownership. Was pretty interesting. And a little disturbing at how, I know this has been happening in Arizona and Phoenix, in the Phoenix housing market. I was really surprised that it's happened so heavily in the Minnesota and the Minneapolis housing market.
Oh, in North Minneapolis, that happened, it's happened several times over the number of crises we've had, and economic, and so much of what was single-family owner-occupied homes are now single-family rental in one of these packages, and it's been really difficult for the cities. And I know it happened in St. Paul as well, and some of the suburbs.
Yeah.
A lot of the first-ring suburbs are in that same position of having their housing stock in the control of, a conglomerate that is got financing to go in and make the purchases and rent them, and the results aren't always very good for the tenants in those either. I just know enough about it to be really fearful of and applaud their efforts to try and buy some of those back. And it might be the way the free enterprise system works. They may have to pay more than what the people did who made the original purchases, but just to get them into a more stable environment for a neighborhood or a city. And did he mention anything in North Minnesota, or was it just more in the Twin Cities?
No, it was just the metro. Yeah, just in the metro.
I know that's...
Yeah, but I years ago, when I first moved here, moved to St. Paul, I talked with the building inspections, and the fellow that I talked with, it was a fascinating conversation with him, and he said that one of the things that inspections do, that they look at maintaining the value of the housing stocks for tax purposes, and that if the value of the housing stocks diminish, then the tax base for the city diminishes. And it's pretty well known that rental property does not hold its value in the same way that homesteaded ownership holds a value. And that was really another interesting thing to me, that the building inspections, one of their mandates was to maintain the quality and the value of the housing stocks.
But this isn't occurring here. We don't have an excess of rentals, clearly.
It's not, what is happening here is that small investors are buying up properties for short-term rentals. That conversion is happening. In the cities, it was taking those what would typically be first-time homeowners' purchases and turning them into long-term rentals, taking them off the market.
Right.
But what's happening here is that a lot of properties are being bought up by outside investors and local investors and turning it into short-term rentals. That's happening.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of an abundance of long-term rentals, so.
No.
Okay.
But I think the point that I really was captivated by was the only way to fix this is to get out ahead of it. So to get ahead of these investors, and that's what he was talking about when they talked about buying these packages back.
I see.
Is that they had to have a chunk of money to do that. Is to get out in front of it. There's got to be a chunk of money.
A lot of that money is raised in public and private offerings, literally, large chunks of capital raised from investors to do that. And my guess is Habitat's looking at doing the same thing to reverse the process. And because they're a nonprofit, they may have some advantages in terms of what they can offer to investors. I don't know that, actually. That'd be worth exploring, but I applaud Habitat for trying to do it. You know, rental housing, long-term rental housing, especially in difficult, poorer neighborhoods, is tough to begin with. And when the landlord is sitting in Baltimore instead of in Minneapolis, it doesn't help. And it's not a good situation for anybody, but, you know, it's there, and it's a reality of life.
With your financial background, is that something that you could call Norm Coleman up and ask him those questions?
Well, yeah, I could do that. I know of him, but try to find out what they have in mind. Actually, I know a couple other people at Habitat that might be good.
Because I'd really like to know how they're doing it. I think that'd be really fascinating. It may not apply to us. Thank you.
Do you have anything, Chris?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you bring that up, James. It seems like you're talking about a bidding war or the competition of acquisition for things that already exist, right? But we know up here it's not so much that. We need vacation rentals. It's part of our economy. I think more than running defense on those types of bidding wars and acquisition competition is we just need more, and the more should maybe have some stipulations in place that it can't be vacation rental if it's more.
I think you're right.
I mean, it's good to bring up. It's good to watch what other communities are dealing with.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's really what we're dealing with here necessarily.
I think you're right on that. Yep. I think you're right.
May I ask a question of the county commissioners? Standing in, I think I'd asked the chair about this earlier today, actually. On the subject of, and I'm sure this is a bit of, if it's anything like further down the shore, it's a bit of a Pandora's box with regard to vacation rentals. But has the county and the commissioners thought about instituting some sort of cap on numbers or permit process numbers and throughout the county, or how is that? I'm trying to get up to speed on that conversation.
We haven't spent a significant time. We have brought it up. Okay. We're aware that it's happening in other places.
Okay.
And we are looking right now at vacation rentals, at short-term and long-term rentals, and there's a committee forming, and I'm sure that you're going to find some of that information very valuable.
Yes, I will. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Hopkins, did you have something to add to that?
Just that, yes, there's a committee, and that's going to be forming a committee. And this is a huge topic in our community. And this, our vacation rental ordinance is 3 years old now, and I think it's time. I would love to have this board give input on that. I think it's vital that this board discuss the zoning issues as they relate to housing. But didn't want to put one more thing on your plate today, but
it's already on my plate, Commissioner.
That's on the board's plate, I think, when we have our discussion. This is something that needs to be discussed.
Well, and we certainly could at least wonder whether that might be a role for Jason to be on that committee. I don't know what the
Land Services is in the process of forming the committee. For the commissioners, Commissioner Storley is the representative on that group.
Okay.
All right.
In any event, if there's anything I can do to be helpful, I'd be more than happy to do so. I know it's a complicated thing that needs to be balanced and well thought. And there will be a lot of opinions in the community. I know that for a fact, and justifiably so. So if I can help, let me know, please.
Great. And have you received any copies of the past ordinance and any of the background on the studies that were done previously?
I have looked at the versions that are online at the county website.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, and I don't know who needs to keep us informed and when we should participate in the discussion, but I agree that is certainly relevant to our work here, so please.
Tim
tell
Nelson
us-
is in the process of forming the committee. I'll make sure to connect with him and make sure that the two of
Right,
you
and
talk.
when you want us to have a discussion, Stacy, or,
Well, I'm hoping on May 4th that was when I was going to bring it up, but
that would be
Yeah.
part of it, okay.
Sorry to jump the gun on that conversation
No,
topic.
that's fine.
No, it's timely. I know that it's happening right now, so.
One of the things that would be helpful is to dig up data on actually what is happening. There's a lot of hearsay, both sides. I mean, I've heard it all, and I just haven't seen any actual data on what is going on. I mean, yes, there are people who've registered for commercial licenses, and is that everybody? Is there any enforcement, and is anybody checking on that? The number of single-family homes, going from long-term ownership to variable VRBO, I don't know if there's any data on that or not. It doesn't sound like there is, and those are things that would really help, because the hearsay, that depends on what you want to hear, is how that works. And
There is data on applications, and Assessor Thompson is part of that group, and we'll have a lot of information available.
great, yeah, the more the better.
That could be recovered, couldn't it? Because when somebody applies for a license, then you can look on the deed and see when that shifted from private ownership into this new license. So that data can be grabbed up. Yeah, okay.
I would just say, I am also on the Grand Moray City Planning Commission.
Oh,
Yeah.
Now, Grand Moray has a different ordinance, and we do not track how many
Okay.
vacation rentals are in the districts that they are allowed in.
Is there a permitting process, Commissioner?
Nope.
Okay, interesting. So it's zoned by right. So in other words, if it's allowed in that zone district, you don't need to go through. you have to go
Correct.
down
So
to
we
part-
don't know the actual number for the ones in the city limits.
Interesting.
But
And
did
the
they-
ones in the city limits don't need to apply for the county
Nope.
they don't have
license?
to have a license?
Nope.
They have to have a state health department license.
They're supposed to have Minnesota
They're
Department of
supposed
Health.
But
to.
there
That's-
is nothing at the city level that is regulating where or how they are run.
Except for the zoning.
Right.
So they may or may not be operating with a state health department license.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'd love to meet with the planning commission sometime as well to talk through some of those items if you're
Thank you.
interested. You're welcome. Yes.
And the Grand Marais Planning Commission meets on Wednesdays at,
Usually it's the first Wednesday of the month. I got a phone call today. It's going to be the third Wednesday for this month, and supposedly, so,
at 2 or 3?
5:15.
So you can talk to Mike Roth about getting on that agenda and meeting with that group. I would ask if there are, any of you have any other ideas about groups that you would recommend that Jason should meet with? I'm setting up some things. As I said earlier, we've met with, well, we were at the hardware store making office keys the other day, so we had the opportunity to visit a little bit with Anna Hamilton. Jason and Anna are going to schedule their own meeting to sit down and get deeper into that
Hamilton
work.
Habitat.
Hamilton Habitat work. This morning, we met with the developers of the Bluefin development in Tofty. We have a call out to Rob Dieter about Sawbill Village. Jason we're gonna set up a meeting with the real estate investment group to learn about what they're working on. I have sent a message off to my former coworkers at IRRB to make introductions there. We talked today about that I can send a message to the town clerks of Lutz and Tofty and Schroeder, and maybe Bill, you would want to be a part of those meetings if Jason's going to get on some town board agendas for a little meet and greet conversation. We'll make sure that you know if that happens.
What about a meeting up at Grand Portage? Beth Dross would be a really good person to help with that.
I did connect with Beth on that to ask her when because I don't know, and she actually had indicated that since COVID, the housing needs have changed a little bit in Grand Portage. So she was going to find out who the best person to talk with about that is.
Good, thanks.
And again, she's out of commission right now until, I haven't heard back from her, but I'm presuming she's going to be doing the protocols, and then she'll be back in the office, and I'll make sure to,
Okay.
I have a list of growing questions for her, so.
Back on
Imagine.
Hamilton Habitat, ask her about she was looking at the lots behind the Viking Plumbing. They owned lots up there that was large enough for 4 houses. And that was denied because it's zoned commercial, and it used to be zoned residential, and that triangle is mixed residential and commercial anyway. And that was a bump up against the zone aspect.
That would be a discussion with the Grand Marais Planning
Because that's in
Commission.
city limits, correct?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
yeah.
And we are working on that.
Good, but I mean, that's an
But I
example of where the
won't- yeah.
zoning
Yeah.
got in the way of
Not gonna
development.
fix that problem.
That's a good example of where the zoning gets in the way.
And then that is about the 5th example I've heard in 3 days where there's some opportunities. So,
Great.
yeah, on board totally. And when I meet with Anna, I'll ask her what she's thinking and if that were to be resolved, that they're still interested in doing that project.
Now, that's been sold, so there is a new owner of the.
Oh, there is,
company
okay.
there. So there's a new owner there. I don't know his name right now.
Max.
What is it?
Max.
Max? Yeah.
That's is that on the north side or?
Yeah, north side of 61.
Okay,
Max.
for reference for me, is it, do we say east that way and west? Okay, it's the same in Duluth, I've never quite,
Yeah.
east or west, got it.
If you go south, you go to the lake.
South is the water?
It's the water, that's right.
Okay, very good. I'll remember that then, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't, okay, thank you.
All right. Chris O'Brien, do you have anything?
I don't.
All right. Bill?
At one point, or in fact, a couple points, I think we had talked about having an advisory committee of potentially interested people, some of whom had applied for Jason's job or for our jobs as commissioners. And I just want to keep that on the radar because I've got at least one down in my area that I think would be a really good contributor to it. But, and it doesn't, we don't need to decide it today, but I do want to keep that in mind because we did have a lot of interest between commissioners' seats and the director's position of local people, and I want to respect that effort that they put in to put their hand up and be interested.
Yeah. We talked about that briefly also with regard to the housing work group. And I think, correct me if I misstate this, but I think Jason wants to kind of get the feel for the things a little bit more before he can figure out the highest and best use for all that energy and all those people that want to be helpful. And yes, we want them to, but, you know, after Jason can kind of.
I just wanted it on the radar.
Yep.
I'm fully sympathetic to Jason's situation. And honestly, it.
Yep, nope, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there's a lot of.
One last thing, any update that anybody has on the state law changes that were needed that was for the projects in Tofty? Wasn't there some action that had to be taken? Or maybe I'm just got mixed up in all the state legislation that the county was pushing. I thought there was an amendment to some law.
There are
needed.
3 housing bills that we're tracking that are before the legislature this year that could provide some financial assistance to housing projects in Cook County. None of them are specific to those projects.
Okay.
Both of the projects in Tofty did submit applications to Minnesota Housing Finance, and they were waiting to hear the result of that. One has been on the list that is recommended, the Saba Village was recommended for funding. And I think that board has met and that is finished. So
That's
that was
correct.
part
That
of
was
our-
last Thursday.
That was part of our discussion with the folks at Bluefin this morning to look at other ways to try to make that project go forward without Minnesota Housing Finance.
Great.
But I don't know of
Thanks.
any Anything specific in law?
I was maybe
for-
getting it even mixed up with the public hearing that was needed on some aspect of that law, that there was a definition that something that you had to have a public hearing on.
Oh,
Anyway.
there was one of the bills that was introduced, the language in the bill said that the funds, the cities would be able to do a 50% market reduction to enable the property tax to be less, to help the, and we worked with Senator Bach and some staff in the Senate to make the language broader so that it also included counties, because that may be what you're remembering. In that case,
Yeah.
Within the city limits of Grand Marais would have been the only location
That was it. Yeah,
eligible for
That
that.
is the issue,
So yes, they did add some,
some language. that
what do
would-
they call it, an author's amendment to add that language to the
Right.
bill, yeah.
And Chair, is that in regard to the 4D tax classification change? Where the class rate is lower than, okay. Good.
And James, do you have anything for us?
I do not, no.
All right.
While we're talking to James, I would like to really express some gratitude to James for all the work that he did. And he's sitting out there now, and he was sitting right up here, and he did just a heck of a lot of work. And I think it was an act of love, because I'm not sure he was paid any extra, or he had to pay for it. So I want to thank James Yorkie for the work that he's done to get us where we are now.
Thank you, Commissioner, and it was an act of love, and it still is. I'm really committed to the work that you're doing, and expect to remain in a support role in whatever way I can. So thank you for the kudos.
Thank you, James. And thank you, Lawrence, for
Yeah.
pointing that out. It's true.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be where we are today without the help and support that we received from Administrator Yorkie. That's for
It
sure.
sounded to me as though Lawrence was making a motion. That would be a formal board action of thanking Mr. Jerky for what he's done up to this point, leading us to where we are today. And if he did, I'd second.
Well, are you saying I should make a motion? I would make a motion of appreciation for Administrator Yorkie's efforts on this project.
And I second that. It's,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Thank you, James.
My pleasure, thank you.
All right. Do you have anything else for us, Jason?
Director report, I suppose. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you. I'm really excited. The last 3 days, there will be more fire hose to come. I know it. There's a lot of water pressure in Grand Marais, it turns out. No, but jesting aside, I'm very excited about the opportunities we have ahead of us, and some of the folks that I've been talking with, for a few months about some interest potentially up here. They're also excited, and I think that if the community here rose together, we all recognize the need. I think we can get some tremendous things done in the next few years. So thank you. I will endeavor to earn my place on this seat, and thank you already in advance for the support. It's going to take all of us to bring our community along. That's the biggest task, I think. The math is hard, but aside from that, it's really helping people understand what we're trying to achieve. So, and if there is anything, of course, I think you all have my do you have my email, my new email? Because if something pops up and you need a quick answer and Mary's out of pocket or something, I have an email address now. It's director@cookcountyaHRA.org.
.org.
So if you have any questions, and when I get a cell phone, I'm happy to give you my 218 cell phone. In the interim, I'll give you my personal cell. It is 5, I don't know if
Yeah,
I should share
you
that.
don't want to do that yet.
I'm going to wait until we're done.
Good idea.
I forgot. Thank you. I'll give that to folks after the meeting. Thank you for that very much, yeah.
Send it to them in an email.
Yeah, I'll email you my contact information, but if anything comes up, let me know. I'm happy to assist. And it's going to be very busy.
All right. Last call for any other business for the good of the order.
Madam Chair, So I have, as the alternate, been here for a number of months, and that's a rather unusual thing. Usually it is the primary commissioner that attends, and I've been attending because I've been involved and engaged, not only based on my passion for meeting the housing needs of Cook County, but because of the fact I wanted to be involved and engaged based on my work with the EDA, and based on the fact I was very involved and engaged in designing questions, being part of the interview process. And so even though I won't be at future meetings all the time unless Commissioner Hawkins calls and is unable to attend, I want you to know you have my full support, and please feel free, any of you, to contact me. I want to be as helpful as I possibly can to our community. And I'm so excited. I actually dreamt about this last night, Jason. And I woke up smiling. I was just, this is a great day for the county. So thank you so much for being here and being the leader for our HRA.
I am very pleased to do so. Thank you. And I will take you up on the support. I will be contacting you at some point, I'm sure. Thank you, Commissioner.
Great.
Yeah, thank you, and for being here with us
Yeah.
Absolutely.
all these months.
Yeah.
And I also will share with you that I told Jason on his very first day that this is my dream come true. And that was a little intimidating for him, but so far he's been doing just fine. And I anticipate that we're going to continue right along that track. This is truly, truly, to have someone who is able to come here with his history and his knowledge and his talents and skills and the passion that he shares with all of us for Cook County, it's a perfect match. So it's very good.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, then, a motion to adjourn.
I guess we don't want to go. I move that we adjourn today's meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye, Chris.
I have some homework.